Hi friends, welcome to my channel. I actually have never made a real video yet, but there's no time to like the present. It just turned 25. Anyways, and this is not really a normal thing. I just wanted to, make my holy shit, make my, whatever. I just want to make myself useful, right? So I thought I would talk about one of my favorite albums so far. I mean, the year's only been like, 10 days. Doesn't matter. Still stands. Probably will be my favorite album for the rest of the year. And that is Ethel Cain's Perverts album. I absolutely love her. I've been a fan for a little bit over a year now. And I'm so excited that I finally got to experience her dropping an album, let alone the Perverts album. I think is just amazing. Anyways, so I just wanted to take some time to geek out and just kind of be a little bit crazy while I talk about, my interpretations of everything and kind of what I'm thinking, what I found, and kind of just summarize it for not only myself, but for you guys, so we can kind of just hang out and talk about it because I'm a fan and I know that some of y'all are a fan. So, if you want to talk about it in the comments, we can discuss. If you just want to listen to me yap and kind of be here, that works too, because I want to share what I think. So, anyways, so this is going to be I feel like Ethel Cain is like a musician's favorite artist because it's so I feel like it's art made for artists or music made for musicians. I don't know how to explain it, but that's how I feel about it. Or art made for music. I don't know. Anyways, so that's probably gonna be the title or something. I don't know. But anyway, so let's talk about Miss Cain. No. Okay. Perverts album overview. I didn't really know anything coming into this. I kind of just saw that she dropped it and I was like, oh, hey, let's listen, because I will usually do that. I mean, I listened to an Ariana Grande album. She was 4th on my Spotify Wrapped. I'm not even a fan of pop music. I'm not even a fan of pop music. Anyways, I'm not even a fan of pop music, and somehow she got to number 4 just because I listened to Eternal Sunshine so much last year. So Perverts. First track. What I have written here is, this is what I imagine hell sounds like. And that I feel like is totally true. It's just massively unsettling. I feel like there's something watching me through a window or a door behind me when I listen to this. I feel like I'm gonna I feel like somebody's gonna knock in my ear. You know what I'm talking about? The spatial videos, and somebody's gonna knock in the back of my ear and whisper in my ear and jump scare me. It's actually horrifying. And it definitely feels like there's a hell soundscape being created. And it makes sense because, first of all, this is the title track for the album. We're painting a picture. This is an exposition of where we are, which is hell, as for right now, at least in the album. And yeah, I basically just have that it's really unsettling. It causes a lot of paranoia. It's a lot I didn't know I could feel like this without having any visual stimulation. It's completely audio stimulation, and yet I'm getting the feeling of a horror movie, which is crazy. Anyways, so don't really have a ton for track 1. Anyways, next one, Punish. So I'm aware that this came out before the album did, but I didn't listen to it. I don't know why. I just listened to the album all together in succession, and I low key prefer that. But anyways, don't come for me. Don't hate. So Punish. Definitely one of my favorite quotes from the song was, "Shame is sharp and my skin gives so easy." And I think that highlights kind of what the entire idea around this song is, which is that I think it just highlights guilt. All I feel is a heaviness and a feeling of shame for oneself, and a feeling of just reliving all of the awful things that you've done, or something awful that you've done. I don't know if this has to do with somebody who is perverted and performed, something like that, and then they're feeling the guilt now that they're in hell. That's kind of what I have at the end of my interpretation, is that it is someone who is atoning for their sins in hell. And it's that feeling of guilt that you have to live through while you are reflecting. Yeah, I definitely carry a very strong Christian influence, or I guess religious influence. I'm not Christian. I'm not really religious, but I feel like this album can carry a very strong religious sentiment, like no matter where you are. Third track, House of Psychotic Woman. I found out that this actually ties back to a book, which is like a memoir / autobiography, which is like actually called House of Psychotic Women, an autobiographical topography of female neurosis and horror and exploitation films. And this actually is said to explore the author's troubled life from childhood, adoption, through teenage years and group homes and reform school and precarious adult relationships, reflected through the lens of horror films that featured similarly unstable female characters. And I feel like the thing that really paints that for me is the repetition of the word, I love you. Like you hear it in the beginning and you hear it at the end, I feel like are the most, like it kind of comes full circle. You come back to that throughout the song. And it almost feels like it's just far away enough that you can't reach it and you can't get to it, but you can still hear it and you can still wish for it. I personally wrote down when I listened to this that it surrounds how psychosis and mental illness makes it impossible for one to feel loved. And kind of how, like, when you are deeply mentally ill and when you are, like, when you do have a personality disorder or things like that, it's often very difficult to feel loved and to be able to trust others. And I said as a final note that you will never feel the beauty of contentment in relationships. And that, I feel like, completely sums up my personal interpretation after listening to the track. So let's move on. Vacillator. Vacillator. I think it's vacillator. I don't know if it's vacillator. Vacillator. Is it vacillator? Anyways, whatever it's called. I think it's vacillator because it's vacillated or to vacillate. When I looked at the definition, I got indecisive. Somebody who can't decide whether they want to do one thing or another thing. And to vacillate is to kind of do it unsteadily rather than oscillating, which is in a rhythmic motion. So already we're painting something that's unsteady, indecisive, you know. The music video to me after watching it, it's obviously Ethel or Hayden. And I believe that she's very sensually presenting herself throughout the music video. And that, to me, translates into you want to be loved, but you despise and punish yourself by denying that. And so that's kind of where the back and forth of unsteady, you don't know what you want, you don't know what to choose, kind of comes from. And I feel like it also is highlighted in like the main line, which is, if you love me, then keep it to yourself. And that's, you know, part of you is wanting to be loved like all human beings. You want to feel the euphoria and the stability and the contentment, but you also feel like you must punish yourself because of some, there's 100 different reasons why you could feel like that. But I would say Vacillator is definitely one of my favorite tracks. I love Ethel's, you know, vocals. I love her. I love when she sings on the tracks. I also love the ambient tracks, but for me specifically, I take it in a special liking to when she writes lyrics and when she's telling a story. At the same time, you can read the lyrics, you're looking into the meaning. It really exposes it a lot more than like ambient tracks like Perverts. Next track we have, I think it's onanist. And the definition of that when I look it up is someone who masturbates or pulls out before you know, into a woman. And in the Bible, because we're tying back to Christianity, in the Bible, it kind of ties back to this meaning of not incorrect, I can't think of the correct term for it, but inconsummate sex, you could say. And it kind of is treated as this like horrible thing because you're denying essentially ejaculate inside of women when you have sex with them. And that is insane. I didn't even think of that. Crazy. For me, I just thought that was insane. That people used to believe that back like in, whatever, old times. But I think that something that you could highlight is that Ethel says it feels good throughout the whole thing. And I think that it's talking about masturbation because of, the whole way that the album is painted and the interpretations and things that she said. I think that it means masturbation. I just wanted to highlight the other meaning, but I also said that you are saving the character from something or loneliness. Interesting. That's what I wrote. Saving the character from something or loneliness. So saving the subject of the song from something. Yeah, and that could kind of talk about something like feeling as though you're unlovable by other people, and therefore you turn to yourself, but at the same time you feel guilt. The piano is crazy. But anyways, Pull Drone. Pull Drone. I love this one. I think this is probably top favorite track. I don't know. The poetry literally sounds like something that came out of like, oh my God, it's crazy. Like, I don't know, bro. I wish for just a speck of the talentedness that you have to be able to write such a beautiful poetry that doesn't necessarily need to be completely fluid in order to make sense. And so for people who haven't listened to it, if you're watching this, you probably aren't, but Pull Drone, it means life. So it's like the pull and the drone of life. And this relates to something that Ethel actually highlights in one of her YouTube videos where she explains a diagram that she's made. I literally just watched it before I started filming this. I can't remember what it's called. You can find it on her YouTube channel. She kind of draws this diagram of, I guess you could say, from like levels of consciousness. So you have like the lowest level where everyone exists, like beginning of ascension, and then God, right? Or yeah, things like that. So this is where we kind of start to get into that. And this is really exciting because I just think that this entire concept is like amazingly illustrated. And it's so interesting. And it's lore. So, but I wanted to break down the spoken word poetry that she kind of, like, not break it down, but kind of like highlight my favorite parts of it, highlight what I thought was cool, because this is my geek session. This is my channel. I'm going to talk about whatever the hell I want to. So the number, like the first, I would say it's kind of a list. I'm just going to say one. I think that it's apathy. And I think that it necessarily highlights nihilism and kind of that idea that I am what I am and I am nothing. And an acceptance of what you are, even if you hate it, but also even if you love it. So, if you catch my drift, I can feel you guys are catching my drift completely. Yep, totally. But anyways, nihilism. For 2, it's disruption. And I thought that the line that like really highlighted this for me is a shimmering of bells through the mist. And that's kind of like disruption. It's something that's breaking through a peaceful, I would say mist is a peaceful thing, but it is an upheaval of something that is peaceful or something that has already been one way. 3rd is curiosity. And I feel like this is kind of where she begins to take words and she always adds this like stain. I would say it's a stain of like negative or disturbing usage of adjectives, or like it's definitely a negative light that we're putting all of these things in. And so curiosity, I have always possessed the insatiable need to see what's inside the room. I feel like insatiable kind of speaks to a lack of self-control, which is not a good thing. Seeing curiosity through that negative lens. And so the next is assimilation, which is like to kind of be the same as, to become the same as everyone else. That could be wrong. As far as I know. I will dislocate my jaw to fit it in. And I believe that preceding this line, there is actually some like really nice imagery. And then I will dislocate my jaw. Does anybody want to dislocate their jaws? No, nobody wants to dislocate. Like that definitely paints it in this negative light that is not great. Next is aggrandization. I had to look this up. Never used this word in my life, bro. Aggrandization. I would say it connects to the words grandiose. And so that's kind of like to receive power, to gain power. So aggrandization, the pole. Now this circles back to the thing that I was talking about the diagram. So the pole is above. Okay, so everybody lies in the great dark, which we'll talk about later. The great dark is like plane 1, right? Plane 2 is the pole. It's when you start to feel the ascension calling you in certain situations, right? So the pole. So aggrandization is gaining of power. That's the pole, right? Okay, let's continue. Because that's mentioned actually in the line, the pole. And then like other stuff. But anyways, the pole I think is the most important part, and it kind of that it speaks to that level of consciousness. Anyways, so next we have a delineation, which I don't really remember what that means. I don't really remember what that means. Anyways, so flush against the veil, I sing. And after this, you hear singing bowl, which is what I believe it is. It's like a Tibetan singing bowl or some sort of singing bowl. I don't know. Some sort of singing bowl that then distorts, like the frequency distorts and it kind of takes this turn into something darker, and which makes sense because 7 is perversion, and that's kind of something that's horrible that's highlighted throughout this whole album. It is no good speaking to fairness, a fool's errand. The fool's errand. Why did I not write that in English? It's fine. I'm going to be honest, I don't really know what to say for this one because it kind of confuses me, and this is one of those things where it's like I definitely want to hear someone else's opinion, and I want to hear what you guys have to say about like what you think about certain things. And if you don't agree with me, and if you do agree with me, but please include that if you can or if you want to, so that we can kind of talk about our opinions. 8 is resentment. Let me tell you how much I've come to hate you since I began to live. And hate is highlighted. Resentment, hate. Those two things kind of go hand in hand. The word resentment and the word hate, it's kind of, I think that resentment is kind of a thief of contentment and joy and things like that. And we kind of see, I feel like throughout the album, it is kind of highlighted, at least so far, that a lack of contentment isn't necessarily like a good thing, but it is always present in humans. I definitely think that that's a theme that you could pick out. Definitely a theme that I see, but that also might just be my interpretation. I don't know. Anyways, so 9 is separation, which it kind of seems like we're taking our downturn now. I mean, we had perversion, which was kind of that first downturn after the singing bowl. But now we're really starting to see separation. So we've kind of taken our downturn, and now we're kind of here where we're at the bottom, and that's separation. So I'm sure hell must be cold. This is like a fallen angel, I believe it talks about, and things like that. And then we have degradation. Nature chews on me. That is insane. That is insane. Like it's the disturbing imagery that is painted throughout this whole like short story or not short story, spoken word poetry. And I definitely think that there's some significance to that. I personally, I think that it's a very strong way to convey larger themes and emotions by using this really disturbing imagery, but it's also just something to highlight. So we're at degradation and then annihilation. So I feel like we're kind of on the end side of this, right? So I will claw my way back to the great dark, and we will not speak of this again. So the great dark, there's the first mention of another one of the levels of consciousness that Ethel talks about in her YouTube video, right? So we have the great dark is kind of the base level that it's like the living realm, or kind of just where humans are, like what you can see, what you can touch, what you can feel, right? So that level of consciousness. So the great dark is kind of the base. So the person is kind of going down. They're in the hole, right? Which is below the great dark. And then they're coming back up and they want to get back out of the great dark, right? So they're coming out. And then 12, which is the final level, is desolation. And there's not really a specific, I guess, there's not more elaboration on this one. Basically kind of just circles back to onanism or onanism. I don't really know how it's pronounced. Onanism, which is, once again, masturbation. I love this quote. It's the thing that it ends with. It's, I am that I was, as I no longer am, for I am nothing. And I remember reading that and kind of being confused because it kind of just seems to say nothing and multiple things at the same time. But when I broke it down, to me, I am is the present, that I was is the past, as I no longer, so that's the future, and for I am nothing. So past, present, future, I am nothing. And this could maybe speak to stagnation, to suffocation, something. Those are the vibes that I'm getting, are like stagnation, not going anywhere, suffocating because there's no growth, kind of just being stuck and caged. Those are the vibes that I got kind of from that. But that is kind of the end of my analysis of the spoken word poetry in Pull Drone. And so then, following it is a musical sequence. Love it. Great. Amazing things. But I personally can't really talk about it because I'm kind of just here to talk about the lyrics. So, I definitely think you should go listen to it. But let's move on to the next track. We have, I think it's Etienne. Why do we always have to choose words that I don't know? Anyways, it's a name. So I looked at this up and it gave me that it was a French name, but also the biblical significance is that the name itself relates to Saint Stephen, right? And Saint Stephen is significant in the Bible because he is the first martyr of, biblical time, or of Jesus Christ. And a martyr is a person who voluntarily suffers death. So let's keep that in mind while we go into the actual word set and the meaning, the ideas expressed. So we open with a quote, a clip, something like that. I couldn't find the origination of the clip on the internet. So I don't know if it actually is clipped from something or if someone said it or what it comes from. But it is kind of someone telling a story of a man. Oh my God. It kind of tells the story of a man who wished to kill himself, right? So he thought that by running and raising his heart rate, he could cause himself to get a heart attack and die. So it tells a story of him doing it multiple days in a row. And the method that he does this with, which is the running, made him want to live again. And that's kind of how it ends. And in my opinion, the way that relates to the title of this track is that a martyr is someone who voluntarily suffers death. Whereas people naturally fear death. That is a thing that, because we don't know where it comes from. We don't know what happens after it. We don't know a lot about death because it's something that's past our consciousness. So a martyr is somebody who voluntarily chooses death. One might say that by being a martyr, you free yourself from the fear of death and therefore can live in another level of consciousness or awareness. That's kind of what I got from this, is that it kind of speaks to an ascension of consciousness of oneself, and that they're moving towards the pole, which is above the great dark. They're moving towards the pole past the fear into the divine theater, right? Which we'll talk about in a moment. So this is kind of that movement and that like accepting of death and moving past fear by being a martyr, blah, 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 blah. So, and then we move on to Thetortia, I think is how you would pronounce that. That's how I pronounce it. That Tortia, I don't know. That Tortia. This is just Lucy can't figure out the names of things and didn't bother to learn how to pronounce them before she filmed this. I'm not sorry. So, Etienne kind of is now the stepping stone into Thetortia, which talks about the divine theater. So that is above the pole. Once you're following the pole, you get past the fear, and now you're in the divine theater, which is kind of where you are below God, but you are at the highest level of ascension that you can be at, right? So Thetortia, defined by Ethel herself, is the bitter acceptance of the knowledge that God will let you near, but he will never let you stay. So this kind of talks about what happens after you reach the divine theater, right? So you follow the pole, you're at the divine theater. You can't stay there. You know, the only person that belongs there indefinitely is God, whatever you consider that to be, okay? The force of whatever, God, right? So the divine theater is not a place that can be permanently reached by human beings or permanently stayed at. So, you know, God will let you near, but he'll never let you stay. And I think that this is kind of what I think the divine theater would sound like. So there's a lot of vocalizations. There's not necessarily direct lyrics, but to me, it's unsettling in an Ethel Cain's music kind of way where she just chooses. Her music is so deep, and so it can never be completely like settling. But I would say that this is a very, like, it doesn't seem like a necessarily negative force when I listen to it. So this is kind of the singing of angels, you know, that you see when you go to heaven, right? Or it sounds like a sense of reaching a climax to me, or a place of peace, like you've made it to the top, right? So that's kind of what the Torchia is, in my opinion, and that's kind of what it means to me, in terms of like the ascension diagram and everything like that. So then we move on to the final track of the album, which is Amber Waves. When I looked up Amber Waves, I looked into if Ethel had kind of mentioned what a meaning was for this track, and I found that Amber Waves is becoming addicted to the euphoria of the divine theater. So he talked about the divine theater as being this great climax, this great place. It's peaceful. It's the top of the ascension, being the closest to God, but you can't stay there. So Amber Waves speaks about, personally, I think you can see it through drug addiction. It kind of touches on, or any sort of addiction that you're following in order to reach that euphoria permanently, which is naturally impossible and likely damaging to try to do it permanently in any other way. I would say it's also a very peaceful track. I think that it's very calming, and probably more calming than the Torchia. And The Devil I Know Is the Devil I Want is a very interesting concept, because in my opinion, I feel like it's the God I know is the God I want. But maybe choosing the devil is like you're ascending, but it's not true ascension. So you're choosing addiction to drugs as a form of ascension to try to get to God, but it really is the devil because it's not this authentic, euphoric experience of going through the process of the pole to the fear, to the divine ascension, blah, 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 right? So you're not going through that naturally and in its own way. You're forcing yourself to get there because you want the feeling. So that's maybe why you say the devil I know is the devil I want. So I have in here that it could possibly be using drugs to numb oneself. It also kind of reminds me of how people describe the coming down of like ecstasy or LSD or another form of like hard drug, like kind of the come down from that. If you overload yourself with feelings of, dopamine, serotonin, other chemicals that may make you feel like you are in the divine theater without actually naturally experiencing that, the come down, you're not going to feel anything. Like you have completely depleted your tank. And so this is kind of comes into that feeling of you were nothing to me at all and I can't feel anything are kind of what we close the track on. It also kind of carries this narrative of being left by someone, and this could be someone feeling like they're left by God because they can no longer be in the divine theater and they can't get that close. They can't be God. They can only get as close as he will allow them to. And so they're feeling betrayed because they went through this whole process and now they cannot reach it on their own control because humans love control. People love to be in control and they'll do anything in order to do it. And so I think this kind of maybe touches into some form of resentment for God in terms of being left. And kind of that come down, how you can't feel anything and you are nothing to me at all, how it feels to reach the level of ascension is what we're calling it, the level of ascension in unnatural ways. So yeah, that's my opinion on the track. I know I've seen a lot of people saying that Amber Waves itself is the climax track, and that's kind of where you see, like what it feels like to be at the top. In my opinion, it's the Torchia, and it kind of like comes up to this climax over all of the tracks, and then the Torchia is at the top, and then Amber Waves is kind of how you feel when you're, coming back down from that. But yeah, that's kind of everything that I found in kind of just researching, listening to the album multiple times, using my own artistic interpretations and my own opinions on life and religion and things like that are definitely included in my analysis. I'm taking from everything, watching Ethel's YouTube videos and seeing, the diagram and kind of connecting that. Once again, definitely want to say that this is completely my own opinion and my own interpretation of this album. There are probably a million different ways that you can interpret this album. I just wanted to share mine because, the internet is an area of free speech. And so if I want to talk about something that I really like and I'm really interested in, I can. So yeah, I thought I would because this is like so interesting to me. And honestly, I feel like it's like top tier artistry. Personally, right now in my life, where I am right now, right now where I am in my life, I feel like it is the top tier of artistry to be able to produce something that people can take millions of different meanings from. Like, depending on your age, depending on like where you come from, your experiences, your trauma, everything, you can carry a different meaning of the same piece of like artwork. I think that is a very, 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 very high level of artistry that I respect a lot. And so this was so fun to be able to dive into and to be able to look at and kind of examine my own values and all of those things. And I really hope that listeners to this album can also do that and share, and compare and talk about your opinions in the comments or on Reddit, because I don't know where else you guys want to talk about it. I think there's this, I'm not on Discord. But some people talk about it on Discord. Anyways, the internet's a cool place, so we can all talk about it. But yeah, so that was my opinion of Ethel Cain's Perverts. If this is your first time seeing me on the internet, I also am a musician. I make music under the name Lucille Elfrida on TikTok, Instagram. I don't really post on Instagram. I really post on TikTok, but all that's going to go on Instagram if TikTok gets deleted. Instagram, sometimes on YouTube, sometimes on Facebook, I got all my family members on there, and I don't really want them to see that. So, yeah, if you want to check out my music, that'd be super cool. If you want to just be friends or something, that's also super cool. Thanks for watching.